Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Attention Please podcast, now on video. If you like this podcast, kindly like, share, subscribe. You know what to do. So today, the topic for discussion is the Indian budget, which was passed last week. And in order to discuss that, I have with me an expert, which is something which we normally don't have on this show. So let me introduce you to Dr. Alok Ray. Dr. Alok Ray is a professor of economics. He's retired now from Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta. Many of my viewers have actually been his students. He's also taught at Cornell University, University of Rochester, Monash University, Queen's University, various universities in the world. And he has a bigger identity here, of course. He is my father. So nepotism, yes. So let me start off with the first question, Baba, which is, I'm going to refer to him as Baba, obviously, not as Dr. Ray. I can't do that. So the first question that I have is, I was just doing some research about the budget, and I was leafing through what the worst reaction to the budget was. And the worst that I could find was from Shatrughan Sinha, from Trinamool Congress. And I didn't understand what he was saying, but is this the least criticized budget that I can recollect in my recent memory, or am I wrong?
Yes, I guess that should be a correct assessment. Yeah, because whatever I've seen in the media, well, except for that, we're not hearing that standard anti-poor and pro-poor kind of labeling anymore. I mean, people are becoming a little bit more nuanced than that anyway. But still, I think by and large, it has been received well. Yeah, let's say.
So tell our viewers, how the budget has been. What are the highlights? What are the lowlights? And surely there must have been some negatives. So what are the positives? What are the negatives? However you want to frame it, please go ahead.
Sure. I'll mention both the positives and negatives, and also the critics, what the critics are saying about.
Sure.
But before I go into that, let me give a few preliminary, so to say, opening statements. See, the budget is supposed to address the major economic challenges before the country in the light of the economic priorities of the current government, because economic priorities of different political parties, governments are different. So even if the state of the economy is the same, they would view it through different lenses in that sense. Okay. But at the same time, you should remember that there is too much of hype around the budget in India, unlike in many other developed countries. I mean, I'm not going into why it is the case, but the simple thing is that budget is just only one instrument out of many instruments available before the government to pursue its economic policies. Okay. Therefore, we should not.
If I could interrupt you here just for a second. So are you saying that the focus is exclusive, is inordinately on the Indian budget, is because we kind of inherit a planned economy? We still think on those lines, that economy is planned in 5-year installments.
Mindset has not really changed. But nowadays, many important policy announcements are made at other times. Okay. However, common people are very much interested in the budget because they are interested only a small part of the thing, whether income taxes are going up or going down, and which commodities will become cheaper or more expensive. I mean, that's their focus. Understand? Economists are more interested in the macroeconomic impact of the budget. Business people are more interested in knowing which sector will gain, which sector will lose. Similarly, stock market is also interested for that reason. So before I go into the specifics of the budget proposals, let me just say the proverbial a few words on the state of the economy. Okay. Actually, as many of you know, India currently is the 5th largest GDP in the world in official exchange terms. And it's the 3rd largest if you measure it in terms of PPP exchange rate, right after US and China. We are the 3rd largest in PPP terms. Okay.
But hold on. The critics would say, the critics would actually want per capita, right? They'll say our population is huge and that.
I'm exactly coming to that. But in per capita income level, we are still, you can say, a poor country, because our rank in terms of per capita income is 142 out of 194 countries. Even in PPP terms, we are slightly better off, but even that rank is something like, I guess, 125. So in that sense, we have a long way to go. And remember, when you measure per capita income, we are counting Adani and Ambani's income also and dividing it by population. Okay, yeah. So per capita income really does not represent the average poor man's income. And our per capita income is around 2,500. So that would be 8 times 16, let's say about 2 lakhs per annum, counting in Adani's and Ambani's Tata's income. So we are really a poor country in that sense. That is why high growth is absolutely essential. If we have to move to, let us say, to go to the middle income range, so to say, okay, within, say, the next 10 years or 15 years, whatever is the planning horizon. And that is the focus of this government, and that is the focus of successive budgets nowadays. How to promote growth, even if in some sense redistribution, the so-called redistribution or entitlement suffers in the process a bit. Because you see, the critics will always point to that other thing. Oh, you are reducing allocation for the so-called entitlement schemes like NREGS, midday meals, etc., etc. It is true that even if you keep these things in nominal terms, in real terms, the allocation is falling, whereas more and more is being spent on infrastructure development and things of that sort, skilling of labor. But the government would say, yes, we are really focusing on having, let us say, at least 8% growth rate for the next 2 decades or so. Only then we can hope to become at least a middle income country, which is our vision, so to say. Okay, and so that has to be understood in order to understand the budget. But at the same time, we must remember, what is the philosophy behind it? Because why you can say why you are ignoring, or I shouldn't say ignoring, but neglecting the redistribution part. Well, the official explanation would be something like this, that growth helps reduce poverty in 2 ways. So it is not that if you pursue growth, then poor people will suffer. Actually, poor people will gain, in the sense more jobs will be created, productive jobs.
Wait, let me interrupt you again here. Isn't this the trickle-down economics that you're talking about, which was part of what the conservative...
I will not label it trickle-down, because trickle-down is an idea that say, you see, Adani's, Ambani's are becoming very, very rich, and a little bit is trickling down. It's not that. If more jobs are created, people are getting directly money in their hands. It's not that whether Adani, Ambani are becoming better off. They might be better off, because industrialists who are starting projects will be better off. But anyway, if more jobs are created, more people have more money in their hands to spend. That's the basic idea. Okay. Second thing is this, that higher GDP means more tax revenue. That means the government has more resources even to spend on pro-poor programs. Because if GDP is low and tax revenue is low, so even if you want to, you cannot have pro-poor welfare schemes. Okay? So in order to finance pro-poor welfare schemes, you need to have tax revenue. And if you have high growth rate, then tax revenue will also be growing at a high rate. That means the government will have more resources even to spend on the poor people if it wants to. Okay? So this is the two-pronged, or 2 ways in which even growth helps the poor people in that sense. Okay? So that is the basic idea. Now let me say something about the current state of the economy. Now, actually, finance minister should be quite happy with the current state of the economy by and large, because India right now is the fastest growing big economy in the world. This year, it was in the last year, perhaps with the exception of Saudi Arabia, which somehow became the fastest growing big economy last year, but not this year. Yeah. Anyway,
I mean, their economy is based on petroleum, right?
Oil and things. So when oil prices go up, etc., they become, so that's a different kind of thing. But India was the fastest growing big economy last year, this year, and is projected to remain so even in the next year by international agencies, estimates. So therefore, India is so-called in a sweet spot right now. Even on inflation front, India is better off than many other developed countries. Since you are in US, you know very well.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So your inflation rate is 9-10% kind of thing. But even the Indian inflation went to some 8% at one point of time, but now it has come down to below 6% right now, which is the upper limit of the RBI inflation target. RBI inflation target is 2 to 6% band. Now inflation is within the band. Unlike developed countries where the target rate is 2% and you're having inflation 8-10%. So if you measure the excess of actual inflation of one target, so India is definitely far, far better off than USA, UK, or European Union, and so on. So again, their finance minister should be quite happy with this. So,
Baba, let me interrupt you here to tell you one anecdote.
Yes.
So when we're talking about US, in the US, in order to prevent prices from going up, they actually now give less. There is one chicken wing less in Pizza Hut. So the number of chicken wings they used to give has gone down. So technically the price hasn't increased. So this is like hidden inflation even after that. Technically,
something is happening in India, because in India lots of things are sold in small sachets, like the coffee, 2 rupees coffee. So okay. Yeah. So yeah, but then if you look very closely, you will see that the content has gone down. They have not changed the price. Most people don't bother about that. Like say 1.5 gram used to be in a packet, now it is 1.1 gram kind of thing. So this same trick is used everywhere. Anyway, so on growth we are on very good ground. Even on inflation we are on good ground. Even unemployment. Actually, I think in 2018, even according to the official report, which was kept hidden by the government for some time, India's unemployment rate reached a 45-year high in 2008, even just before COVID. But then obviously
2008 or 18?
2018. But then during the COVID time, suddenly the situation worsened. There's no doubt about that. Well, people lost jobs, and moreover, many of the people who had to return to the villages because of lockdown and so on. But now things are have returning to normal. Most of these people who went back to the villages are now gone back to the towns for jobs, etc. So unemployment rate, even by CMI data is not very favorable to government, you see. So the critics are required to CMI data, but even by CMI data, unemployment rate is going down. So again, there things are not bad. One cause for worry is the balance of payments. Okay, the trade deficit is worsening. Again, it is understandable because there is generally global recession kind of thing going on. The rest of the world, even though we are growing at say 7% rate or something like that, 6-7% rate, many of our buyers, so to say, foreign buyers, their income is not. It's more or less stagnant, or even if it's going 1-2% growth, so they are buying less goods in that sense.
But hold on, doesn't the falling rupee help us here?
Well, there is a lot of economic literature on this. Even if it happens, it takes time, because in order for exports to increase, and not only that, I mean, there is another problem. Since we're asking, I will give a little bit of economic lesson. What happens is this: you see, if rupee falls, right? So what happens is this, that Indian goods, let's say the price of, let's say, Indian tea per pound is fixed in rupee terms, right? So it will become cheaper in dollar terms, right? But then if dollar terms, suppose it becomes cheaper by 10%, right? And here, what that term, price elasticity of demand comes in. Now, if demand increases, but by less than 10%, then total dollar earnings will fall. Because you see, price is falling by 10%, quantity is rising by less than 10%. So P times Q will be rising at less than 10%. So in that case, our export earnings will actually fall after depreciation. So a lot depends upon the price elasticity of demand for products, etc. So the situation is much more complicated. Often people take a simple-minded view that depreciation or devaluation will improve trade balance. That's not necessarily true. There are lots of ifs and buts there in terms of economic theory. Anyway, so since foreign demand is stagnant, our exports are not growing fast, but our imports are growing very fast because our growth rate is very high. Okay, so that is one reason. And then, as you know, that our import bill is very much influenced by international oil prices and so on. Even though here India is a bit fortunate, because even if Europe particularly has been very badly affected by the energy crisis caused by the Ukraine war, India India has taken advantage of that, because India is able to buy oil at concessional rate from Russia.
By the way, just to let you know, it has been terrible in the US also. So our gas
Yes.
bill last month was 5 times what we normally have. Five
Five
times what we had last January. So I'm comparing January to January, 5 times.
My goodness.
They sent an email. They sent an email saying it will be more than twice. We are letting you know. And it was 5 times.
Oh, more than twice, yes, correct.
More than twice was their version, the gas company's version. It was actually 5 times. And this was across. It was just not something we did. It was across this area.
Okay. So, but India in that sense has been less affected because India has taken advantage of that. Russia has been forced to sell oil to some countries, and India is one major buyer. Okay. And then even on capital inflows, outflows, because first of all, the global uncertainty, but more importantly, because of higher rate of inflation abroad, and as a result of which Fed and the central banks of many other countries are raising their interest rates.
Yes.
So the interest rate differential, which was in favor of India, has been eroded to a very large extent, right? Mm-hmm. And therefore, money which is coming in to earn higher interest rate in India
will go.
Yeah, often is not coming. There's capital outflow and all that. And whenever there is any global uncertainty kind of thing, a lot of investors, they want to stay with their cash, and moreover, they want to keep it in dollar, which is considered to be a safe haven kind of an asset. So for all these reasons, our capital account also was suffering. But at the same time, we must remember that sooner or later, foreign investment will have to come to India, especially of the FDI type investment, not the kind of money, the short-term money which comes in search of higher interest rate, but more long-term kind of investment, which gets invested in factories and equipments kind of thing. Foreign direct investment, they would go to countries which gives them higher rate of profit.
Right.
That basically means high growth economies. So if India can maintain its high growth status, then sooner or later, this foreign direct investment, which is the best kind of capital to have, rather than the short-term fickle kind of money, because once somebody invests in, let us say, a green energy project in India, they cannot just pack up and take away their money whenever situation changes.
It's not very liquid, right? That kind of investment.
Not very liquid. So this is a more stable kind of thing. And this stable kind of capital ultimately will have to come to India if India can maintain this high growth status. So everything taken together basically means that we will have to focus on high growth. That should be the focus. And that is the kind of focus which this budget, maybe the couple of budgets earlier, has been pursuing more or less. So now coming to this thing, I should say, okay, now your question, good or bad budget, maybe I can now answer a little bit. So I would say it is rather realistic, prudent kind of a budget, not overtly populist. There will be some doses of populism will have to be there in any kind of budget. But in any case, you see, the term populism is often considered a derogatory thing. But the democracy, you see, it has to be populist in that sense. I mean, because the only thing that we have to guard against is this, whether it is short-termism versus long-termism.
Yes, I mean, when people say populist, I think what populist means isn't that it's popular, but that it is cheap. It is basically popularity bought. It's like what Mamata Banerjee does, paying chada, a lot of chada to the Pujo pandals. That's populism, right?
Yes. Because otherwise, obviously, people must gain in democracy. So it has to be populist. But the only thing is this, that if the government wants to help the poor, wants to hurt the rural sector, they should build more roads, schools, hospitals, etc., rather than give 500 rupees here, there as doles.
Mhm.
That is short-termism.
Mhm.
But we have to be populist. So nothing wrong with being populist. That's what. But anyway, but this is, remember, this is the last full budget before next year's election. And therefore, there are a lot of expectations or apprehensions, you can say, that it will be a highly populist budget, but it is not. And therefore, the finance minister has been fiscally very, very prudent and realistic in that sense. But if you want to do that, if you want to consolidate your fiscal situation, then something has got to give. I mean, you cannot increase spending everywhere. I will spend more on infrastructure, then I will spend more on all the welfare programs. Therefore, you have to make a choice. And this government has made a choice in favor of growth promoting kind of allocation rather than welfare promoting kind of thing. Even though, I mean, this government also pursues welfareism in various aspects, but at least the allocation on those heads has not increased very much. So that is the basic idea. Okay. So
Dr. Amartya Sen will not like this budget.
Yes, Dr. Amartya Sen. I've heard some other JNU economists like Jayati Ghosh and Telegraph.
Jean Drèze, or I don't know how you pronounce his name.
Yeah.
Jean Drèze or Jean Drèze.
Yeah, Jean Drèze, yeah, obviously. They will certainly not be happy, but anyway. But now I should say India also has got another advantage which we should remember, that India very soon will become the most populous country in the world, for good or bad. So now we are going to have the so-called demographic dividend. This is the time. Another very important thing is that the percentage of working age population in India is very high relative to the aging population countries like the Western world, even China, Japan, South Korea, all these are now experiencing declining population. And therefore, finding workers to work is becoming more and more a problem. So that is also another major attraction for India, investment to come to India, because you will find still cheap labor in India. But
and also I would guess that a younger population means that there's less national spend on healthcare and the problems of an aging population.
Pension, less pension payments also, because this is called the less dependency ratio. Right. Because ultimately the pension has to be paid from the earnings of the working population.
Sure.
So, yeah. And not only that, I mean, if it is an aging population, then there will be lots of savings, because people would not want to old people will have to save for their long life, so to say, right? So that means less demand and its consequent problems, okay? So we are in that sense in a very sweet spot, but one major rider here, that we have to develop skills for our workers. It's not that we can reduce raw labor from agriculture and make it use in today's relatively high-tech factories, you see. So we'll have to train them properly. That is one major thing where we'll have to focus. So one is the infrastructure, other is training of workers. And that is what, at least in theory, on paper, the budget is trying to do, I should say. Whether they will succeed or not, that's a different matter. That's the implementation question. I'll touch on this later. Okay. So now another thing, Anna. Again, the critics many say, oh, well, you have growth, but growth is jobless. You hear that complaint everywhere. Jobless growth, a very catchphrase nowadays. But now you have to understand this, that we cannot fight with technology. Technology is becoming labor saving. There is absolutely no doubt about that. But that only means we have to grow at an even higher rate to compensate for this. In order to create the same number of jobs, now GDP will have to grow at an even faster rate. So that means an even bigger priority for growth. I mean, so when the critics say, oh, it's jobless growth, then I would say, yes, even if it is jobless growth, then we should grow even at a faster rate so that it does not become jobless. You see? Okay. Now, if you want, I can go to some specific budget proposals, unless you have some other question.
So the question that I had was that with greater capex, that's what I read, doesn't it lead to more inflation? especially when you increase. I mean, doesn't that immediately lead to inflation?
No. A lot depends upon the total expenditure, not really the capex.
Okay.
Right. And so long as the finance minister is maintaining fiscal discipline, that they actually I can give you some data if you want to, that actually our fiscal deficit actually it shot up during COVID time because of the huge stimulus everywhere. But then everywhere. But then fiscal deficit is coming down gradually. Not only that, it goes to the credit of this finance minister that she has been able to maintain the so-called revised estimate, more or less the same as the original budget estimate, which is a big achievement. In India, it does not normally happen. You see, the target and the actual often becomes very, very different. That at the end of the year, you see, the actual budget deficit is much more than what you targeted. But that is not the case with this finance minister, because when it makes the original, projections, so to say, she has been very, very conservative. And even for the next year's budget, which is projected, he is thinking of, tax collection depends upon nominal growth, does not depend upon real growth. Because you see, you pay tax on your money income, not on your real income, right?
Right.
Right. Therefore, the finance minister has projected there will be 10.5% nominal GDP growth next year. Now, it is more or less agreed that India, the base case growth rate is 6.5 real next year, 6.5. So inflation would be around 5%. It could be more, but say inflation 5. So 6.5 plus 5, 11.5. So nominal GDP growth should be 11.5. But she has made all the estimates on the basis of 10.5 nominal growth, which means she has had some elbow room. That's why this is a very good thing, because if some, say, natural calamity happens or something like that, or if for some reason another COVID kind of situation develops, or we have to spend much more on NREGS at the end of the year, or some other welfare schemes, she has some margin left there, which is a very good thing. In other words, she is very solid on the fiscal consolidation. And the fiscal consolidation part is very, very important. If you look at some of our neighbors, if you let go of fiscal discipline, then you will end up like Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Turkey, Argentina kind of thing. So you should be very, very careful that you cannot just open your purse strings and spend all around, and then you cannot beat economics all the time. Anyway, so now
just a side note, Baba, isn't it interesting that we there's a lot of news, or rather a lot of news cycles are consumed on the rank of India in different indices and
human development indexes
on different things, right? And we are told that India does so poorly in comparison to Sri Lanka, in comparison to some of these nations which are now facing bankruptcy. So what does it really say about either these indices or the criticism, or rather extrapolating that index as a marker of how well the country is being governed?
Well, you see, if you take things of China, this will become quite clear. During Mao's time, in terms of human development indexes, China was much higher than India. If you read Amartya Sen, you will see a lot of writings on this kind of thing.
Even though they were killing millions of people, that's not a problem.
Yeah, exactly. But there were lots of poor people. There used to be famines, which Sen was also one of the first so-called leftists to point it out. And actually, Sen became very unpopular with some of the leftists. That how can you say that during Maoist China, millions perished in famine? Okay, so you can have good human development indexes in that sense, but still you can have shortage, poverty, famines. Right.
And murder. So human development killing millions of people.
Yes, killing millions of people and all that. So-called Great Leap Forward and so many other things failed miserably and all that. So Sen's point was this. That's why Sen is in favor of multi-party democracy. He says that in China, people die of famines, but in post-independence India, people do not die of famines because there is a free press, there is media, right? So there will be There is parliament, so there will be lots of Allah, even if some people, a few people die in, say, Kalahari or whatever, or for instance, some place in Odisha, whatever. But endemic hunger will remain in a multi-party democracy because no one bothers about that.
Right.
But if people die of famine, yes, then the press and we. So that is the plus and minus of a parliamentary democratic system.
That is absolutely true.
Okay.
So what was the negative? I just want to focus as we get to the end. What the negative of the budget was? Because you've said, because Baba, you've said so many good things, people will start saying that you're BJP now, which both of us know is not true.
I know. Yeah. Okay. Now, the critics would point to a number of things. First thing that, as I said, they would say that there is less expenditure in real terms on social sector projects. Like,
but everything can't happen together, right?
Exactly. But you see, those people generally would say that is their priority rather than growth. This is the problem. But the reality is this, that you cannot spend more everywhere. Mm-hmm. So you have economics. The main thing is the budget constraint. Economics, the primary thing is everyone has a budget constraint. So, but you can say, well, there are some economists who believe that, well, you can print money and go on spending, and there will not be inflation. You see, one reason is that because in Western countries and US, this thing happened for quite some time. You see, inflation was remaining even within 2% and all that, even if there's a lot of, you can say, stimulus expenditures and all that. It happened for quite some time. Therefore, many economists believe that, okay, you can spend your way out. But you see, sooner or later, you see, economics will catch up with you. Because there were a lot of excess capacity at that time and all that, but now you are not in that kind of fortunate situation. So it cannot go on indefinitely. Therefore, fiscal discipline will have to be maintained. And if fiscal discipline has to be maintained, something has got to be reduced. Now it's a question of where. Now, the critics would say, no, their priority is that since we are still a poor country, we'll have to spend more on NREGS. They will even point to midday meal, and some critics are pointing out that we should spend much more on midday meals because during COVID time, a lot of poor families have been forced to shift their children from even private schools to government schools because they could not afford to, because they become unemployed, so they could not afford to pay the school fees. Mm-hmm. And not only that, because of online classes, and some people did not have access to smartphones, net connectivity and all that. So there is a lot of, huge learning deficiency. So to make up for all this, we should spend much more on particularly education, midday meals, etc. But there, the allocation is inadequate. So this is one criticism that is being made. Another criticism is I should say this: the highest income tax rate has been reduced slightly in this budget. Whether you have noticed it or not.
Mm-hmm. But isn't that to promote people from getting from the old scheme to the new scheme? It's like the
no. That's a different thing. I'm talking about the super rich tax rate.
Okay.
I'll be talking about the new old thing later. But you see, the highest income tax rate, which say Adani, Ambani at least are supposed to pay. Sometimes they don't pay because of, as you know, some of the richest people do not pay tax at the highest rate. But anyway, highest tax rate, so to say, inclusive of surcharge, has come down from 42.74 to 39% in this budget. So some say, oh, look, this is a pro-rich government which is cutting down, particularly when inequality, I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that inequality everywhere is going up in terms of the resources or the income in the hands of the top 1% or even top 5%, etc., is going up at a very fast rate. Almost all countries. Same is true in India. So they say, well, the need of the hour is to tax the super rich even at a higher rate. But this government, being pro-rich, is actually reducing this. So this is another thing. But here, the government spokesperson's defense is this, because I sometimes watch this what the government spokespersons say, these media conferences. They're saying that, yes, we have done that because, you see, maintaining very high tax rate becomes often counterproductive, that people evade taxes. This is one thing. But even though I don't know, reducing it by 1-2% will make the difference. But their point is that alongside, some measures have been taken to make it more difficult for the rich to evade the tax net, because that's what they think is the real problem. That there are a lot of people who are not paying any taxes, so to say. And so what have they done? You see, there are a lot of people who go on foreign tours nowadays, taking foreign tour packages, which are fairly costly by Indian standards. And I know of some of my doctor friends who have a lot of cash, which they don't declare in income tax because they take money from patients in the form of cash. They spend it on this kind of thing. So they will declare maybe a very small amount of income every year.
But hold on. Let me give you a counter criticism to that. So that's normally what US Republicans here also do. So they will say that we are cutting the tax on the super rich, but we are closing loopholes. That's exactly what they say. But that still doesn't get them of the criticism that why would you cut the tax rates of the, you can close loopholes and not cut their tax.
Yes, exactly. So I'll also say the same thing. Yeah. So it is not either or. I mean, you can have both. Yeah. But they're saying, for example, let me give you one instance of what they have done. That if you now buy a foreign tour package, previously only 5% of tax was being deducted or collected at source. It's not TDS, this is a TCS. So it has to be, and then you can even get it back. I mean, if you are say below tax exemption limit, but at least you are now within the tax net and the tax surveillance. Now 20% will be deducted. So now we'll have to get back 20%, but then immediately the income tax people can ask you, you have spent 5 lakhs on your foreign tour and you are declaring your income as 4 lakhs. So how? Show us the source. Mm-hmm. So these are some of the things. And then some rich people were buying very high value life insurance policies. Okay. And the life insurance policies in India particularly, that when the policies mature, you also not only get back the amount that you paid out, but you also get some basically interest on that.
Yeah, we don't get any of that in the US.
Okay, but gone. Yeah,
you pay is gone.
Yeah, you do. I mean, so if you don't die and if your policy matures, then you get back even that in some money. And this money is tax free because it is insurance. So they wanted to encourage insurance. So, but now the government says that no, for very high value life insurance, something like, I think if you pay more than 5 lakh per year to buy life insurance, then you will have to pay tax on the money that you get back at the end of the term, etc. So again, these are some of the things which they are pointing out, that we are also tightening the screws on rich people. But again, that does not particularly explain why we have to reduce this thing. Now, another criticism, which is more general kind of criticism, and I agree with this criticism, is this. See, what has happened is the central government is now taking recourse to a trick nowadays. You see, I think the Finance Commission suggested that 40% of total tax revenue should go to the states. This is, I think, the 15th Finance Commission or 14th, okay, whatever. I think this was around 2006. Or something, this was decided. After that, what the central government is doing, they're raising most of the taxes in the form of cess and surcharge, which does not have to be shared with the states. So as a result of which, instead of having 40%, I think in this last budget, I was looking at some of the figures, the states are getting only about 30%. So there is a trick which the central government is doing. So the state government share is coming down over successive budgets through this trick. At the same time, what happens is that, let's say international oil price goes up. Often you will hear this, the central government will ask, why is the state government is not cutting their tax? But that is unfair. On the one hand, you are paying them, you are giving them less and less in terms of the share of the total kitty. And then whenever you're in trouble, you ask them, why And nowadays, because of the
but here's a question. Here's a political question. Given that the BJP rules so many states, it's not a, why would it, and especially the most important state, Uttar Pradesh, right? So they rule Uttar Pradesh, they rule Gujarat, now they rule Maharashtra. So they've pretty much some of the biggest states, in both in terms of size as well as in terms of money. Why would they try to do this to states? Doesn't that cut into their own political objectives? Because ultimately, I think that the most important thing is not so much to rule the country. I mean, it's important, but to rule the states, because the states are really the most. They have the police.
Yeah, well, I do not know how the minds of politicians work, or whether they compensate those BJP states in some other ways so that they can pursue this kind of thing, but they will not do it to Mamata government or up government or whatever.
Mamata government is always complaining about this. So
yes, always complaining about it, and there is some logic. I not know that because of the GST now, the state governments do not have much independent tax revenue source anymore. The only thing they have the tax on liquor and this oil. These are basically the two sources which are left for them. And actually, one more thing in this connection, you see, another reason why you see there is much less tinkering with the indirect taxes is that nowadays the central finance minister cannot do it anymore, because most of the indirect taxes have now been subsumed under GST. And GST is another purview of GST Council, not another purview of finance minister alone. That's why in budget, you see, there's much less changes in indirect taxes because finance minister cannot do it anymore. So the only thing they can change is the income tax rate or the customs duties. These are the two things.
So the era of 2% cess on kumkum is over.
Yeah, yes.
Random.
Yes. Now, here I would want to bring in the Adani factor. See, because the budget discussion nowadays in India is being overshadowed by the discussion on the Adani factor. But why it is important? Let me mention you this. Not because of what happens to Adani as a person, or whether he's connected to people in high places. That's a separate question. Whether even the allegations are true or false, I'm not going into that. But whatever it is, if Adani's empire suffers, then India's infrastructure sector will suffer hugely. Now, the situation is such that Adani has his tentacles, if you want to put it this way, or Adani is now the dominant player in almost all infrastructure sectors in India, for good or bad. Okay. Ports, airports, coal, power, new energy, and so many other areas. So if Adani's empire goes down, then implementation of many of these infrastructure projects will also be in big trouble. So in that sense, it is true that Adani's fate has become now intertwined with Indian economy's fate. I mean, I'm not saying that this Hindenburg is against India. I mean, as Adani is trying to put it, they are conspiring against India. No, they are not conspiring against India.
They're short sellers.
They are short sellers. They have the self-interest also here, I must say.
Sure, absolutely. And honestly, in this day and age, you don't know who is behind them. It's not a question of being against India. I mean, that is a very shady company which is under investigation by US authorities also. So it's not that there are any lily white flowers there. You don't know who's paying them, honestly.
We remember, I think in 2016 or 18, the EPW editor, Poranjoy Bhottagutta.
Yes, he was sued by Adani, yes.
He had to resign. He was forced to resign from EPW editor because the EPW management said you have to pull it down. We cannot fight with Adani. He refused. He resigned, and then now a number of court cases are still pending against him. As a matter of fact, in Telegraph there was a big interview, and I heard that he even had he even sat face to face with Adani, urging him to take down those cases, etc. in very, very recent years. And but they said that this would be off the record and whatever it is. But he has mentioned that there was some discussion, but he was non-committal about this. But now Poranja is saying, I have been vindicated, because these are basically the same kind of things which are said at this time. No one took a notice. I had to suffer, but now that another major US so-called research organization has said, that people are now taking notice. Whatever it is,
but how is this related? So I understand your point that Adani is at a too big to fail kind of stage, right? This is exactly why the banking industry or the American car industry was bailed out in 2008. Because if Ford went belly up, if GM went belly up, then even though they had taken some questionable decisions, the US economy would take a lot of time for US economy to recover from that. So I understand your point that Adani has become like that, too big to fail. I think Ambani is also like that. I think Ambani is also too big to fail, but Ambani's financials are strong. Nobody's doubting that.
Exactly. Because for quite some time, a lot has been written in media about, you see, Adani firms are highly leveraged firms. By conventional standards, the debt equity ratio is very, very high. In that sense, they are much more vulnerable than, say, Ambani's companies, etc. But
I think, I mean, again, not an economist, but most empires, like the one he's built, when they grow initially and they grow very fast, this is the way they grow. Once they reach a stability, I mean, it's not that Adani has nothing. It's not like Bitcoin, right? It's not like those kind of exchanges that they have nothing. It's all based on fiction. No, he has infrastructure. He has things. So
no doubt about that. No doubt about that. But still, there is something called some prudent debt equity ratio. All finance experts will agree that yes, you cannot go beyond a particular level, but in some cases, he is far above those limits. So all the time, his things are a little bit vulnerable, because whenever, let us say, the Credit Suisse or some other things say that we are not going to accept Adani bonds, then there will be trouble for Adani more than, say, Ambani.
Right, sure.
Because of this. But anyway,
Ambani is on much stronger footing. I mean, it's a very old company, right? It's been there for a long time.
Yes.
There was a time when if they had gone after Dhirubhai in the 80s, the same similar thing could have happened to him.
Yeah,
but he's way beyond that now.
I think if you remember, after Ambani Senior passed away, there was some obituary, obviously, from different people, and I was hearing one from Rahul Bajaj. And Rahul Bajaj was said that, well, many people complain that Adani, that Ambani has made use of this license permit Raj by, let's say, hobnobbing with the politicians, etc. But let me be very frank with you, we all tried to do the same thing. He was much better at this game than us, so we should not complain. The same thing would be true about Adani also, see. That because of various reasons, I mean, because of his long grown friendship from Modi, from his Gujarat, when he was Gujarat CM and whatever, he has developed some kind of connection, which is helping him. There's no doubt. And actually, I must say, I have looked at some of the answers of the Adani people to the questions raised by Hindenburg thing. I mean, they are not very convincing, to say the least in my mind. I'm not an expert on this financial thing, but they're not very convincing. But at the same time, I must say, the kind of allegations that are being made also not very new. In Indian context, at least this thing happens. The question is the scale and all that, because the Mauritius.
No, it's not just India. It happens everywhere else.
Everywhere.
That kind of
everywhere.
Everywhere. That is how growth happens. Honestly, this is the way growth is shown.
Even say Queen Elizabeth apparently kept some of her money in this tax haven in some British islands or something. This is pointed out by some people. Anyway.
I think that's the least of the Queen's problems. The royal family's problems is like, if of all the sins, that's like
anyway. But
we'll have to wrap up because we're kind of
Okay.
Now some concluding remarks.
One thing that I should mention, because a lot of our listeners might be interested in doing this: new tax regime, old tax regime. Okay. So let me explain a little bit on this thing. I mean, because there is some uncertainty. Basically, there are two regimes here. The old regime, where you can claim all kinds of deductions. New regime, no deductions, but lower tax rates. So now you have a choice. But what happened was that there are very few takers for the new regime. Only about 1% people switch from old to new. So now this government wants more and more people switch to the new regime. So they're trying to make the new regime more attractive because it is simpler to administer, there will be less litigation, etc. There are some advantages. But I am highly doubtful whether they will succeed given the kind of things which they've done. So let me explain a little bit why. You see, first of all, what they have done now, if you go to the new tax regime, then if your taxable income is up to 7 lakhs, you don't have to pay any tax. Okay, basically. But if your income is 7 lakhs and 1 rupee, then you will have to pay tax on your entire amount. So the limit is strictly the 7, because it's actually not actually the tax exemption limit has not been raised. It is the tax rebate. Okay, this is a slightly different thing.
So hold on. So if it's 7 lakh 1 rupees, you're charged on not the 1 rupee, but on the 7 lakhs
entire amount.
So it's basically so it's not progressive taxation, right?
No, not only that. Then if your income is in this neighborhood, you have to be very careful in calculating things. You can make a small mistake. You thought that, okay, I'm in zero tax, and then suddenly you end up, because the income tax officer say, oh, you have missed out these things. And then they add something, and then you will be in real trouble. So that is one thing. But even if you're not in this 7 lakh range, let me give an example. Suppose you are earning 9.5 lakhs and you're a senior citizen, because senior citizen case I understand better. Suppose you are earning 9.5 lakhs. If I stick to if I go to the new regime, I will have to pay tax on the entire 9.5 because it is above 7 lakhs, right? Mm-hmm. But if I make use of the old one, I can afford to pay zero tax. How? From 9.5, I can invest 1.5 lakh in PPF, which is called 80C exemption. Then Mediclaim, I can get 50 lakhs. Then on fixed deposit interest, I get another 50 lakhs. Okay, sorry, 50,000, I should say. 1.5 lakhs, then 50,000, then another 50,000. Then if I have taken some housing loan, and then I'm paying interest on that, then up to 2 lakhs, I can get a deduction. So 1.5, 0.5, 0.52. That means 4.5. So I can claim 4.5 lakhs deduction. 9.5 minus 4.5, it comes to 5. Under the old regime, if my income is up to 5, zero tax. So I'll pay zero taxes. In that case, even if I'm earning 9.5 lakhs, I will stick to the old regime. And now suppose I have husband and wife. So 9.5 times 2 means 19 lakhs would be tax-free income if I stick to the old regime.
So hold on, right? Get the point. So why doesn't the government just sunset the old regime and say, no, we will have it for 3 years and then you have to go to the next regime?
No, eventually perhaps that is their objective, but right now they do not want to antagonize, maybe.
Before elections.
For various reasons, and maybe, and many of the politicians also, their declared income also will be in this range. I mean,
politicians don't pay tax anyway, so that's fine.
No, but whatever it is. So as far as taxpayers are concerned, we are certainly better off if we have 2 regimes. So we have more choices. So that is something. Okay. And finally, since our time is running out, I would say the real devil lies in the implementation. You can announce very, very good schemes, etc. on paper, but ultimately implementation happens at the state level and local levels, and that is where the major problem lies. As you know, there are huge problems in land acquisition, and there are sometimes huge problems in employing contract workers. And sooner or later, some political party will be on your throat. Your project will stop midway, and then you will have to pay bribes and all that. So these problems, and no government is interested in punishing the guilty party here, because all political parties play the game. And when a party supports a particular policy, then government will invariably oppose the same thing when it goes to the opposition.
That's the nature of democracy. There is
nature of democracy. So that is why many of the schemes, even in the so-called infrastructure schemes, that appear good on paper, they go through the huge cost and time overruns because of these things, you see. And we lose international competitiveness because of this. Because you have to pay bribes all the way. That increases your cost, right? So that because one of the objectives behind this that we have to make India internationally competitive. But you see, if all these things take place, then it's very difficult to become internationally competitive for some of the companies. And now, finally, I'll say, because the welfare schemes, most of the welfare schemes are implemented at the village panchayat level. These have become dens of corruption. By now, everybody knows about this, that what is happening to this PM Awas Yojana.
But hold on. But why would it increase? There's no objective reason. I mean, there is a base level of corruption always, right? It's been there from time immemorial. Why would it increase?
Problem is that the number of welfare schemes is increasing. So more and more money is now going to the panchayats to be spent as part of local self-government, decentralization and all that. You see.
But when I was quote unquote growing up under the Congress regime, this was considered to be the height of democracy, that ultimately everything will be panchayat according to Mahatma Gandhiji's vision.
Yeah, Mahatma Gandhi
problems will be solved.
Exactly. Now that has become the biggest problem.
So this just goes to show, dear viewers, that pretty much everything that Congress said is wrong. That's what I've been saying for a long time. The more you give to panchayats, it doesn't really solve the problem. And the problem is really unsolvable in a way. So that it's not as if there is another great solution that it's not being done.
No. Because they see, I have since I am now 78-year-old person, and I stayed in village during my formative years, and my father was, you can say, relatively influential person in the village. So I know how the system used to work before all these things. What used to happen nowadays in those days? These blankets would be distributed by the government. I mean, these were the kinds of welfare schemes in those days. I mean, nothing much. Some blankets will be given. So what would happen? The blankets would actually be delivered by the district magistrate at my father's place, because he knows. So it was now left to the discretion of my father to decide who will get it. That's how the system used to work in those days. So ultimately, the district magistrate and whoever in the village, the district magistrate trusts, so to say. So if my father happens to be an honest person, then there will be less corruption. But if my father happens to be a corrupt person, then all the blankets will be either kept in my home or will be distributed to the people favored by my father and all that. So this scope remains or remained all the time. It depends upon the person, but nowadays it has become endemic. And moreover, as I said, now the number of welfare schemes, the amount of money involved is a huge amount. So the scope for corruption is much higher. That is the reality.
That is true. That is absolutely true. So we would have to. It was a great discussion, and we could definitely talk a lot more. And I'm pretty sure that you had a lot more in your notes which you were looking at. But we've kind of run out of time. So thank you everybody for listening. Thank you, Baba, for being here. It was great talking to you. And I'll see everybody next week, hopefully. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Thank you.